A white student believed it would be amusing to shear a black student's hair in front of onlookers, but the reserved new student he targeted proved to possess a unique form of resilience. 13-year-old Tyrese Reddick requested little when he entered Crest Hill Middle School that Monday morning in Thousand Oaks, California. He carried his backpack, a well-used spiral notebook, and the same lunchbox he'd been using since 5th grade. His mom had written a brief message inside, as she always did, "Be yourself." That was sufficient. Tyrese felt no nervousness. He's experienced being the new student previously. 3 schools within the past 5 years, a consequence of his dad's work assisting military veterans transition to civilian life. This one didn't seem significantly different. Bright hallways, worn lockers, that familiar scratchy intercom crackle each morning. However, even before second period, he could sense the nature of this place. Students observed him. Not everyone, but a noticeable number. The long locks, carefully twisted and pulled back, distinguished him. He carried himself with quiet confidence. He avoided ostentation, opting for a simple style, clean sneakers, a tucked-in shirt, and earbuds during the bus ride. Yet, his presence was noted. In Mrs. Lamar's history class, a girl with freckles whispered, "Your hair's cool." He responded with a small, appreciative nod, but remained silent. Afterward, in the cafeteria, he located an unoccupied table close to the vending machine. He was comfortable with solitude. He enjoyed watching initially, noting who laughed excessively, who moved in groups, who acted differently than they truly were. A definite pattern existed. Crest Hill operated with unwritten guidelines. There were the drama students, the sports teams, those who wore costly hoodies and spoke as if they were online personalities. And then there were those who maintained order, deciding who held significance. He noticed one of them before the 6th period began. He was tall, blonde, and boisterous, conversing with a group by the lockers, and they were all laughing excessively at something. Therese hadn't learned the boy's name yet, but he observed how other students either displayed overly enthusiastic smiles around him or avoided eye contact. Individuals of that nature were consistently the same, those who required an audience. Therese continued walking. Upon arriving home that afternoon, he placed his bag near the kitchen door. His mother was preparing red beans and rice, humming softly. "How was your first day?" she asked without turning from the stove. He shrugged. "Same as usual." "Did you make any friends?" she inquired. "Not yet." His father, seated at the table in a pressed polo, looked up from his tablet. "Are people staring?" he asked. Therese paused. "Don't hesitate to address it," his dad said, his voice even. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone, but you also won't allow them to take advantage of you. Do you understand?" Therese nodded. "Yeah. You're not attending that school simply to endure it. You are there to command your presence, silent if you desire, vocal if you select, but never allow anyone to define you based on their assumptions." His dad expressed himself in that manner often, not through formal talks, but through subtle guidance, valuable insights woven into the aroma of coffee or while tending to his boots in the garage. Therese paid close attention. He consistently listened. The following morning, as he secured his hair back in the mirror, he reflected on his father's words. He didn't need to create a disturbance. He simply needed to be dependable. However, even dependability couldn't prevent a storm from developing. Within the first week, Therese understood the social dynamics well. Crest Hill wasn't overtly unfriendly, but it had its nuances, those subtle cues that revealed the power structure. And centrally positioned within that was Brent Granger. Brent wasn't the largest student, but he carried himself as if he were. His dad owned and operated Granger Buick GMC, a car dealership located off the main highway, and it was well known throughout town. He habitually wore his hoodie halfway off his shoulders, kept his socks pulled up high, and had a knack for transforming every classroom into his own personal game show. Teachers put up with him. Students either adored him or actively avoided eye contact. There was no middle ground. Tyrese understood this perfectly. Brent wasn't seeking popularity. He wanted to be feared, admired, and followed. He had cultivated this reputation through a deliberate strategy, employing boisterous jokes, harsh nicknames, and ensuring he had an audience whenever he criticized someone. On Wednesday, Tyrese passed the outdoor basketball court during lunch. Brent was present with his group, Logan, Bryce, and Chadwick, all 8th graders, all known for being loud. Chadwick noticed Tyrese first. "Yo, new kid, do you play?" he yelled, spinning a ball on his finger. Tyrese continued walking, his earbuds in. Brent gave a smirk. Was he really spending that much time on his hair? The others chuckled. Tyrese remained unfazed. However, he registered every comment. Later that day, Logan brushed against him in the hallway. "Oops," he stated matter-of-factly, without acknowledging him. It wasn't accidental, it was a challenge. That night, Tyrese sat on the back porch with his dad, an ice pack on his knee. He'd received a hard elbow during PE basketball. It was the same group. Insufficient for a formal report, but enough to send a message. His dad looked at him, but remained silent initially. "I'm good," Tyrese stated. "I know you are," his father responded. "But being good isn't the same as being ready." Ready for what? Tyrese pondered. He didn't desire to be the angry child. He didn't want to be a target, either. He simply wanted to be left undisturbed. However, individuals like Brent tend to recognize those who are reserved. They test and provoke, anticipating a vulnerability. And Tyrese? He remained steadfast. He was carefully considering his actions. Friday arrived. It was gym class time. The locker room before the bell consistently held a peculiar atmosphere, a combination of boisterous energy and the scent of deodorant. Tyrese was securing his shoelaces when Brent entered late, holding a pair of scissors. "New kid?" Brent called out across the room. "Did your mom forget to give you a haircut?" Tyrese remained silent, continuing to tie his shoes. "Man, you're sporting a whole jungle on your head." Several students laughed. A few appeared awkward, but offered no comment. Then Brent approached. He held the scissors in one hand, mimicking a playful gesture, waving them around. "Just saying, bro, you'd probably make a whole wig with what you got." Tyrese finally looked up, maintaining a calm demeanor, his eyes steady. He appeared neither scared nor angry, but completely focused. "You good?" Tyrese asked, his voice low. Brent blinked. "What?" I said, "Are you good?" Brent stared at him, momentarily disoriented. "You talk now," he snapped, attempting to regain his composure. "Man, whatever." He turned and left, discarding the scissors into a locker as if they held no significance. Yet, Tyrese understood the gesture. It was a display of dominance, a deliberate act. Brent, however, was unprepared for the consequences when the pretense ended. By the start of the second week, a change was palpable. It wasn't overt, nothing that could be documented in an official reprimand. Still, Tyrese sensed it. Entering class, he noticed subtle looks. Not fear, not interest, simply observation. A posture of expectation, as if everyone anticipated a confrontation. He preferred to avoid entanglement. Within Mr. Delano's science lab, he heard a student whisper, "That's the person Brent is involved with." During lunchtime, another student subtly shifted their tray when Tyrese took a seat at the table's end. He remained composed, neither adjusting his position nor expressing any reaction. He simply ate more slowly. One afternoon, while on his way to the library, a 7th grader, a slender boy with braces, approached him near the vending machines. "Hey," the boy said, slightly winded, "are you Tyrese?" Tyrese looked over. He cautioned, "Just, be careful around Brent. He's been speaking about you. Said he intends to make a statement." Tyrese questioned that. "A point?" His companion confirmed, "Yes. He says you believe you're superior to everyone. He's planning to correct you." The young man paused before adding, "He did something to a 6th grader last year. He poured a milkshake on his head during lunch." Everyone laughed. It was quite disturbing. Tyrese acknowledged with a nod. "Thank you." The boy appeared to want to add something, but someone called his name, and he ran off. That evening, Tyrese lay on the living room rug, feet resting on the couch, looking at his phone. His mom was close by, checking papers. "Something on your mind?" she asked without looking up. He hesitated. "Have you ever had someone harass you just to see you react?" She set down her pen and turned to him. "You mean like bullying?" "I mean like they notice you don't join their games, so they force you into one." She paused, allowing the words to linger. I've encountered individuals like that before, she remarked. In college, even during my first teaching job, some people struggle to grasp peace unless it aligns with their expectations. He responded, you maintain your principles. You acknowledge your identity, and you refuse to allow others to compromise your stability. He nodded in agreement. His father entered the room, wiping his hands with a towel. Do you wish to speak with me? He inquired directly. Tyrese observed them both, then straightened up. I thought, his dad said, settling into the chair opposite him. Is that the boisterous one? Yes. What is he doing? Nothing yet. Just comments. Bumping into me. Talking as if he's seeking a reaction. Is it effective? Tyrese shook his head. No, but it's becoming tiresome. His father leaned forward. Let me tell you something, he said. The world is full of kids like Brent. It doesn't matter if you're 13 or 30. Some of them have loud voices. Some wear uniforms. Some hide behind keyboards. They all behave similarly. They test and challenge you, attempting to provoke a reaction, either a rash response or retreat, he indicated by tapping his finger on the coffee table. You refrain from either action. You remain composed until they acknowledge they're confronting an unexpected challenge. Tyrese looked at him. Can I strike him? He inquired. If necessary, his dad replied, but not fueled by anger. Never out of anger. You strike to halt the behavior, not to dominate. His mother remained silent, but offered no disagreement either. The following day, Brent passed Tyrese in the hallway and bumped his books from his hand. The papers spread out, fluttering across the tile. Brent smiled, a seemingly accidental gesture. Tyrese bent down, gathering them up individually. Several students paused to observe. Others looked away. Brent remained, waiting. When Tyrese straightened, he remained silent. He simply stared, a prolonged gaze that made Brent blink. What? Tyrese spoke, his tone even, just enough to convey, I see you. I am not afraid of you, and I am not responding as you instructed. Brent's smile disappeared. However, some individuals require explicit clarification, detailed step by step. It was gym day once again, and the locker room was filled with typical middle school activity. Sneakers scraping against the floor, lockers banging, the sound of inexpensive deodorant spraying permeating the space. Tyrese consistently prepared quickly. He entered and exited swiftly, avoiding conversation, showing off, or joking. He approached it as a task. When he entered, Brent was already present, seated on the bench as if expecting someone. It seemed he was the observer now. Tyrese remained composed, located his locker, entered the combination, and concentrated on changing. He sensed eyes on him, not just Brent's, but others as well. Logan, Bryce, and Chadwick. Even some students who typically stayed out of things. Yo, Brent said, rising deliberately. You still rocking those spaghetti ropes on your head? A faint sound, like laughter, rippled through the room, but it lacked strength, as if even amusement had become weary. Tyrese concentrated on his shoes, securing the laces firmly. Brent approached. He retrieved an object from his pocket. Scissors, silver, sharp, and genuine, likely taken from an art class or workshop. Have you ever considered change? Brent inquired, manipulating the scissors with 2 fingers as if they were a plaything. It could tidy you up. You might actually appear normal. Tyrese raised his gaze, his face blank, without a flicker of movement. Brent smiled. Before anyone could intervene, he reached out and cut. A moment of dread. The cut was clean at the base. It fell to the floor like a fallen leaf. Several children gasped. One whispered, yo. For a brief instant, everything paused. Tyrese rose, steadily, without haste, without hesitation. His expression remained unchanged, but something shifted behind his eyes. He looked down at the dread on the floor. Then he looked up at Brent. You think this is amusing? He asked. Brent smirked, slightly. Tyrese did not shout. He did not lash out. He advanced, composed, deliberate, and struck Brent with a quick elbow to the chest. Brent recoiled, astonished, gasping. Before he could respond, Tyrese intervened once more. Rotation, sweep, ascent. Brent fell heavily to the ground, without flourish, without ostentation. Simply efficient motion. His father had instructed him in that. Accuracy, not force. Brent attempted to rise. Tyrese positioned a knee on his chest and moved in close. "You do not touch me again," he stated. Voice even. Never. The room was utterly silent. It was documented. Naturally, Coach Timmons entered the room just 2 seconds afterward. Tyrese signaled, using a whistle as if they were on a football field. "Hey, what's happening?" Tyrese retreated. Brent was on the floor, one hand pressed to his ribs, the other still holding the scissors. Coach addressed both boys. "Office now." The journey to the principal's office was quiet. Tyrese remained silent. Brent attempted to portray himself as the injured party, murmuring about his intentions and claiming it was merely a joke, his hands visibly shaking. Principal Rossner observed them, her expression stern behind her square glasses. "Begin speaking," she instructed. Brent spoke first, attributing the incident to Tyrese, asserting that he reacted inexplicably and it was a misunderstanding. Tyrese remained silent, patiently waiting. Subsequently, he retrieved an item from his pocket and placed it on the desk, a cut dread. He maintained direct eye contact with Principal Rossner. "He brought scissors to school." Rossner blinked as he cut my hair. Her face remained still, though her eyes shifted. She then turned to Brent. "Is that true?" Brent stammered. "It was a joke. I wasn't going to actually—" "You cut his hair?" No response was given. "I want your parents here." "Now." Coach Timmons stood behind them, arms crossed, silent. 20 minutes later, Tyrese's mom arrived, entering calmly but with firmness. She sat next to her son, placed a hand on his shoulder, and looked the principal directly in the face. "Before we say a word," she stated, "I want to know if you all understand what this means." Rossner exhaled slowly. "We're handling it." "You better." But the truth was, this wasn't just a school issue anymore. It was bigger, and it wasn't going away quietly. By that evening, the video had already started making its rounds. It wasn't a long clip, just 10 seconds, but it showed everything. Brent moved forward with scissors. Tyrese advanced, executing a takedown. Following that, there was a close-up shot of Tyrese leaning in, appearing composed and resolute. The quietness in the locker room spoke volumes. The incident spread through group chats and Instagram stories. Even a few students from Northwood High School shared it with captions such as "He messed with the wrong one," and "Brent got folded." Tyrese made no posts about it. He offered no comments. He felt no need to. His parents were seated at the kitchen table, facing Principal Rossner and Brent's parents, Dean and Colleen Granger. Dean was wearing an expensive watch and a blazer with jeans. Colleen had sunglasses resting on her head, as if she had just left a country club brunch. "Let's be clear," Dean stated, attempting to take charge of the discussion. "Our son made a mistake, but it was simply a prank. Boys his age do not always grasp boundaries. Cutting someone's hair is assault." Tyrese's mother responded, her tone sharp. "Not a prank." Dean questioned the situation. Tyrese's dad moved closer. "Let me explain, man. I served in the Marines. I've led squads in countries you couldn't find on a map. You know what isn't tolerated, regardless of location? Disrespect, particularly when it's masked with explanations." Colleen moved in her seat. "We're just suggesting that maybe your son reacted excessively." Tyrese's mom slowly turned toward her. "Repeat that." "I'm just saying. Perhaps a less forceful approach would have been preferable." Brent did not inflict any physical harm. "Cutting a child's hair without permission is a humiliating act," Rossner finally stated. "Regardless of Brent's intentions, the effect is the same. And if it had been your son's hair, Mrs. Granger, I doubt you'd view it as humorous," Dean said, folding his arms. "So what's the next step? Will Brent be suspended?" "He's suspended for 10 days, Rossner replied directly. "And, subject to the school board's review, we might consider a longer suspension," Dean remarked. Regarding the incident, Rossner stated it was about bringing a weapon into the school, targeting another student, and provoking violence, not over a haircut. Tyrese remained silent throughout the entire discussion, his hands in his lap and his posture upright. He displayed no signs of gloating or smirking. Outside the room, several students observed through the glass door. News of the event had quickly circulated. The following day at school, Tyrese walked the hallway as he typically did, but a noticeable change was present. Some students acknowledged him with nods. Several people simply moved aside to let him pass. A seventh grader approached and exclaimed, "Yo, that thing you did was crazy." Tyrese continued walking. He had no desire for attention and just wanted to get to class. During math, Logan and Chadwick remained silent, offering no jokes or taunts. Brent's group had dispersed. Lacking their leader, they didn't behave as they usually did. Tyrese took his seat, retrieved his pencil, and began his assignment. That afternoon, as Tyrese left school, a teacher he hadn't known well approached him by the parking lot. "Are you okay?" Tyrese nodded. "I just want you to know what you did. How you handled that. It took strength, not just in the moment, but the way you've carried yourself afterward." "Thanks," Tyrese said. "I'm just trying to keep it steady." The teacher smiled. "That's harder than it looks." But respect earned through silence doesn't fade easily, and Brent was beginning to learn that the hard way. Brent's 10-day suspension felt lengthy for all except him. As he remained at home, restricted and disheartened, the school continued. He had anticipated students would support him, perhaps dismissing the situation as they typically did. However, a shift occurred. Students weren't simply avoiding him. They were discussing him. Murmurs in the hallways, uncomfortable pauses in group chats, videos circulated with captions such as "not so tough now" or "play stupid games." Brent's reputation suffered a significant blow. It fractured. Tyrese continued to be consistently present. Headphones on, locker tidy, assignments completed punctually. He avoided any displays of arrogance or a triumphant demeanor. However, his presence felt more substantial now. Not intimidating, simply resolute, as if he was unyielding. The following week, the school arranged a facilitated meeting between the families. An opportunity to discuss the incident and, at least from the district's perspective, reinstate a conducive learning atmosphere. Tyrese was reluctant to attend. His parents advised him, sometimes the most impactful action is simply being present. And that's what he did. They convened in the counselor's office. It was a small room with a circle of chairs that didn't match. Brent entered with a tense neck and a wounded sense of self. He avoided eye contact with Tyrese. His mother appeared more irritated than regretful. His father wore the familiar smirk, as if he were attending out of duty, not thought. Ms. Harrell, the school counselor, inhaled deeply. "We're not here to revisit what occurred. Our intention is to allow everyone the opportunity to share their feelings and discuss how we can proceed." She addressed Brent. "Would you like to start?" Brent adjusted in his chair. "I was simply joking around. There was no intention behind it." Tyrese remained silent. Brent continued, "I didn't realize it would be such a significant issue." Tyrese's mom raised an eyebrow. She stated that cutting a boy's hair is a deeply personal act, particularly when that hair symbolizes something beyond mere appearance. Brent mumbled, "I wasn't aware of that." Tyrese's father stated, "You didn't care to know." "That's the difference." Ms. Harrell then addressed Tyrese, asking, "Would you like to say something?" Tyrese looked up, making eye contact with Brent for the first time in the room. "I didn't come here to fight," he said quietly. "I didn't come here to make friends either. I came here to get through school." Regarding his hair, he added, "That's my business. It's part of me. You touched it like it was yours to joke about." Brent shifted in his seat, remaining silent. "I didn't strike you due to a loss of control," Tyrese explained. "I struck you because you needed to grasp a certain point, and verbal communication wasn't effective." A pause settled over the room. Brent's mother then addressed the group. "We have discussed boundaries with him." "Have we, Brent?" Brent responded with a restrained nod. "Yes." Ms. Harrell added, "Occasionally, consequences provide more valuable lessons than spoken words." She then turned toward Tyrese. "Are you satisfied with the current situation?" Tyrese gave a slight shrug. "I do not require an apology." Brent raised his head. "I do apologize, however." Tyrese observed him, not with the intention of causing Brent discomfort, but to understand his delivery. Frankly, Tyrese didn't detect much substance behind the words. "Okay," Tyrese stated finally. "Then carry it." "Carry what?" Brent asked, puzzled. "The apology? The lesson?" The understanding that not everyone will permit you to belittle them and dismiss it with laughter. Tyrese rose. That's all I needed to say. His parents followed him from the room. In the hallway, his father placed a hand on his shoulder. You didn't fight in that room, he said, but you still reacted. He continued, but the thing about true strength? It doesn't manifest in punches. It shows up in how you choose to leave. A week later, Crest Hill Middle held a school-wide assembly. Officially, the assembly was about respect and accountability, but everyone understood what caused it. Even teachers were discussing the incident in the break room, though no one voiced it directly. A palpable restlessness filled the gym as students, anticipating a standard presentation and hollow words, grew bored. Then, Principal Rossner took a surprising action. She approached the front without a microphone, relying solely on her voice and a confident stride. We're facing a recent event that has prompted us to reflect, she stated, and the room fell silent. I'm not going to repeat the details of what occurred. My purpose is to discuss the underlying causes and chart a course for moving ahead. She refrained from mentioning any individuals. It wasn't necessary. She emphasized, this school is not a place where power is gained through popularity or intimidation. Respect isn't earned by volume or the number of laughs you receive. It's earned through how you treat others. Even when no one was observing, a few students glanced around, some shifted uncomfortably, but others remained focused. Listening. Tyrese was seated near the back. He didn't withdraw. He didn't exaggerate his presence, either. He simply maintained the posture he now adopted as he walked through the hallways, balanced and steady. Following the assembly, several students approached him. You all right, man? One student inquired. Yeah, Tyrese responded. You handled that situation differently than I would have, another student observed. Tyrese simply shrugged. A sense of silent acknowledgement began to replace the previous laughter. Even the faculty noticed. Mr. Delano stopped him following science class and remarked, I hope you're proud of how you conducted yourself. Tyrese smiled and replied, I'm just trying to be steady. The significant event occurred a few days later during art class. Miss Ruiz gave the class a project exploring identity, focusing on self-perception and external perception. She indicated the project could take any form, such as a painting, sculpture, or even a college application. Tyrese created a painting, a portrait of a boy with locks, cropped, and one missing. The depiction wasn't conveying sadness or anger, but rather portraying the boy standing tall amidst a storm, with other figures indistinct in the background. When he shared his work, the class fell silent. I created this, he stated, because occasionally people fail to understand how profoundly something seemingly insignificant can matter. They dismiss it as mere hair or a simple joke, but it holds deeper meaning. It's about what it symbolizes. The room was silent. Miss Ruiz's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent. She simply nodded. That day, after school, Brent walked past him in the hallway, unaccompanied, without his usual entourage or any commotion. He offered a brief glance. Not an apology, not a confrontation, just recognition. Tyrese nodded once. Nothing further. It wasn't a close bond, but it was a respectful separation. Returning home that evening, his mom was preparing sweet potatoes in the kitchen. Did the art project go well? She inquired. Better than well, he replied. His dad entered from the garage. Did you receive a response regarding your student council essay? His father asked. Yes, Tyrese confirmed, smiling. You're accepted, his father said, pleased. Calmly, proudly. You deserve that, he said. Afterward, as Tyrese prepared for bed, he gazed into the mirror. One section remained noticeably shorter than the others. He hadn't corrected it. He chose to do it this way, not because he lacked the ability, but because it wasn't necessary. It served as a reminder of the challenges he had already overcome, of what didn't break him, of who he was before, during, and after the storm. Because some conflicts aren't about achieving victory. They're about ensuring the subsequent one doesn't unfold in a similar fashion. If this account resonated with you, evoked an emotion, please share it. A lesson can be found within, and perhaps someone in your circle needs to hear it. Join our mailing list for more stories that speak truth, challenge disrespect, and remind us all what quiet strength truly embodies. $1 million neighborhood was constructed on land that had been in his family for over a century. However, when Elijah presented a handwritten clause dated 1923, the entire development and every home within it legally reverted to his ownership. Elijah Jackson didn't require an alarm clock. For 30 years, he had woken naturally just before sunrise, made his coffee, and walked out to the back porch of his father's old farmhouse near Opelika, Alabama. From that quiet wooden deck, he had a clear view across the southern field, the very field where his great-grandfather Otis grew sweet potatoes in the 1930s, and where Elijah's own children had once played in the tall grass. But that morning, something was amiss. The ground felt altered. It trembled. Elijah peered into the distance. Beyond the trees, past the fence line, plumes of red dirt rose into the sky. The machinery was present, heavy, loud, and incongruous. He placed his coffee down and headed towards the sound. Reaching the ridge, he halted, stunned. 3 bulldozers were visible. Behind them, construction teams in hard hats and neon vests were marking the ground with flags, as if claiming it was unclaimed land. But it wasn't. He quickened his pace, the Georgia clay swirling up around his boots. "Hey," he called. A woman in a light gray blazer turned toward him, sunglasses and a clipboard in hand. She seemed out of place in a field. She appeared someone who had never worn work boots. "Can I assist you, sir?" she inquired, her voice suggesting she already anticipated the response. Elijah surveyed the scene. "What is the purpose of your presence on my land?" Her eyebrow showed little movement. This parcel was approved for residential development under West Haven HOA's expansion permit. "You must be mistaken." "Mistaken?" Elijah's voice rose slightly. "My name is Elijah Jackson. That piece of land has been in my family since 1923. It is not for sale. It never has been." The woman held her clipboard up like a shield. "County records indicate this section was listed as unclaimed due to boundary discrepancies during the last zoning update. You are welcome to speak with our legal team, but construction is already underway." Elijah's heart was thumping hard now, but not from fear. "Ma'am, that land is not unclaimed. I have walked it every morning since I was 27 years old. My father was born right over that rise. You're building on ground that holds more history than you could encompass with your permits." She offered a polite, empty smile. "Then I suggest you take it up with zoning and planning. We're moving forward." The machines revved louder behind her. Foundations were being dug. Trees that once shaded Elijah's childhood baseball games were now being stripped away root by root. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He simply turned and walked back towards his house. His pace was slower now. Inside, he went directly to the cabinet above the fireplace. It held old papers, maps, and deeds, dusty and yellowed with age. He recalled his father once saying Otis didn't trust anybody with this land, not even the government. At the time, Elijah had considered it mere paranoia. But as the ground outside was being torn apart, that paranoia felt more like protection. He carefully unfolded the brittle deed and saw it. The faded ink revealed Otis Jackson's name. 88 acres were purchased for $480 in 1923. There were no loans, no banks involved. It was built on sweat, grit, and the unwavering pride of a man determined to leave nothing for anyone else to claim. Elijah settled down. Documents lay before him. A growing unease began in his stomach. Something felt amiss. This wasn't simply a clerical error. He reached for the phone and contacted the Lee County Zoning Office. "I'm calling regarding a construction crew impacting a portion of my property. My name is Elijah Jackson. My family has owned this land for over 100 years. The person I spoke with initially responded with a detached, scripted tone. They stated that if my land was affected by the zoning realignment, I should have received a mail notification. I did not receive any notification. They suggested that notices can occasionally be lost, and then ended the conversation. It was dismissed with that, lost. Potentially, decades of family ownership could be jeopardized by a misplaced envelope. However, Elijah wasn't solely feeling anger. He recalled a story his father had shared with him. Years had passed since Elijah had last touched the old trunk located at the back of the hallway closet. He pulled it out slowly, coughing as dust filled the narrow corridor. His knees cracked as he knelt, unlatching the brass lock. The lid opened with a tired creak. Inside, among black and white photos, funeral programs, and Otis's tarnished railroad watch, was a bundle of paper wrapped in oilcloth, precisely where his father indicated it would be. Elijah was seated on the floor, cross-legged, carefully unrolling the cloth and retrieving a weighty, leather-bound envelope. This was the original deed, the one Otis had kept for himself. Initially, it appeared like any other legal document: printed text, handwritten notes in the margins, a wax seal partially worn. However, concealed roughly midway through the second page, in Otis's faint, cursive writing, was something unexpected. In his own handwriting, squeezed into the margins, a note read, "If any buildings are built on this land without the agreement of the deed holder or their closest relative, those buildings will automatically belong to the deed holder and no payment will be given." This was witnessed and signed on February 2nd, 1923. Elijah blinked. He read it again and again. His hands trembled. He wasn't legally trained, unlike lawyers, but he knew the story behind that clause. It concerned how Otis had distrusted men in suits, particularly landmen. Following a near deception in 1931, where he almost sold half the property for a minimal price, Otis had personally compensated a notary to assist him in drafting what he termed a safeguard impenetrable to any attempt to bypass it. This safeguard wasn't constructed from physical materials like wood or wire. It was comprised of carefully chosen words. Elijah reached for the telephone once more. He contacted Mr. Boone, the local attorney his family had relied on for 3 generations. "I need to show you something," Elijah stated. "It's about the land, about Otis." After 3 hours, Elijah was seated in the worn leather armchair, facing Boone's desk. The lawyer peered through bifocals, carefully examining the document. "Well, he remarked, tapping a knuckle against the clause. "You don't see this kind of thing anymore, but it's clever. If this was notarized and filed with the original deed, it's enforceable." "It is notarized," Elijah said. Otis made absolutely certain of that. Boone nodded. "It's old, yes, but if it's on the record, it's still the law. It might be buried in archives somewhere, but that doesn't make it disappear. So what do I do?" "First," Boone said, pulling a legal pad toward him, "you don't say a word to those developers. Let them build. Every house they finish becomes yours. It wasn't due to your identity, but because of Otis. That man didn't simply leave you land. He left you a carefully constructed snare. A remarkably clever one." Elijah relaxed, feeling the significance of it acutely. He's been prepared to initiate a conflict, enter courtrooms, and navigate bureaucratic hurdles to demonstrate what rightfully belonged to him. But Otis had already handled the struggle. Now, Elijah only needed to wait. Nevertheless, he wasn't foolish. He contacted 2 additional lawyers, just to be certain. One for Montgomery, one for Birmingham. He provided them with scanned copies of the deed, the clause, and the notarization. Both contacted him again within a week. "This is the most secure private property clause I've ever encountered," one stated, "Mr. Jackson. It's as if your great-grandfather constructed a legal landmine." The other remarked, "I've never seen anything like it. As long as you record the construction, everything they build becomes yours. Every nail, every foundation." Consequently, Elijah purchased a drone and employed a professional surveyor. Motion sensor cameras were installed along the southern field's edge. He meticulously documented everything. This included timestamps, recorded footage, ground measurements, copies of sale signs, and open house flyers. Each day, he observed the actions of the West Haven HOA, actions that he believed they should never have taken. They constructed as if they held absolute ownership and marketed as if they had the right to sell. But Elijah understood the truth. And Otis? Otis had anticipated this day for 100 years. If the clause proved to be true, Elijah understood he had a single course of action remaining: to wait. Each morning, shortly after sunrise, Elijah would position himself on the grassy ridge, the sight of the former barbed wire fence. He would rest against the wooden post that he and his father had set into the ground many years prior, with his arms crossed and a camera around his neck, observing. The land below was undergoing change. Where sweet potatoes once grew and his cousin had broken his leg attempting to ride a makeshift dirt bike, now stood rows of modern homes. The exteriors featured vinyl siding in muted colors, fenced-in backyards, and driveways so smooth they didn't feel like they belonged in the country. It felt like watching someone else rearrange your childhood memories without permission. Roads were paved with names like Sycamore Lane and Sunset Walk. Pretty names, but lacking any history. Light poles were installed, sidewalks were poured, and even a cul-de-sac was added that cut right through the grove where Elijah's mother had planted muscadines. The HOA proceeded quickly. Too quickly. Within a month, foundations were set for 20 homes. Real estate agents began appearing on weekends, conducting open houses and offering guided tours to couples and retirees. Large signs near the front entrance announced, "Now selling," starting at $385,000. Elijah remained silent. He simply observed. He recorded everything. Daily drone footage was recorded. Close-up photos of property markers were taken. Videos documented workers pouring concrete, installing electrical lines, and setting frames. He organized all of this in a folder on his laptop labeled Otis's Revenge. Occasionally, a project manager or a site supervisor noticed him. Sometimes they waved. Once a man with a clipboard called out, "Morning," with forced cheerfulness. Elijah did not reply. His purpose was not to socialize. He was there to observe. Then Jessica arrived. Jessica Brenner. She remained consistently the woman she had always been, clipboard and blazer. Initially, she didn't recognize Elijah upon his reappearance at the Ridge. However, within 3 weeks, she began to acknowledge him. On one occasion, she smiled and called out, "Still watching us, Mr. Jackson?" Elijah responded by raising his camera and photographing her. She did not smile again afterward. New houses appeared rapidly, like weeds spreading. The swift pace was unsettling. One day, there would be bare ground. 3 days elapsed, and the construction reached the stage of a complete frame and roof. By the close of the second month, 32 homes had been framed. Of those, 16 were completed, featuring laid sod and polished front porches ready for weekend viewings. Elijah, however, remained undeterred. He proceeded to the county clerk's office to retrieve the most recent sales records. He observed West Haven's name appearing alongside buyers, with the buyers primarily from out of state, Ohio, Florida, and even some originating from California. He meticulously recorded observations, noting each closing date. He verified the location of each home, confirming its presence within the 88-acre zone. All residences were situated inside Otis's boundary. All of them. He even overheard Jessica one morning, speaking on the phone while walking the site. She said, "Yeah, Phase 1's flying off the market. We're starting Phase 2 next month. No issues on our end. The local guy watching from the Ridge, just some nosy landowner trying to stir up drama. We're clear." Elijah clenched his teeth, but remained silent. She had no idea. He possessed 3 legal opinions supporting his position. He had documented evidence, with timestamps, of construction on the contested land. He had Otis's clause, and crucially, he had time. Allowing them to build wasn't merely a tactic, it was a matter of justice. Each home they finished, every square foot they sold, contributed to a debt they were unaware of accumulating. Elijah had already calculated the figures. If the construction followed the initial plan for all 156 homes, along with the community clubhouse and parkland, the total value of the real estate would approach $70 million. This would be transferred to him. Jessica believed she was developing a neighborhood, but Elijah understood the reality. She was, in effect, expanding his portfolio. However, as the sold signs accumulated, Elijah started questioning how long he could delay the arrival of actual families. The first time Elijah observed children cycling on the newly constructed sidewalks, he experienced a disconcerting sensation in his chest. A profound sadness, not anger nor regret. The children were oblivious. Naturally, they played, circling, chasing, laughing as children do. Their parents watched, enjoying coffee on porches overlooking the Jackson property. This was land Elijah's great-grandfather had cleared manually. A few houses down, a young couple was unpacking boxes. The man waved. Elijah raised his hand a little without knowing why. He was unfamiliar with them. They were unfamiliar with him. The new driveway occupied what had previously been his grandmother's garden. He walked home at a slower pace that day, not due to any need discomfort, but because the anger that had propelled him was beginning to transform into a different feeling. That evening, he was alone in his den, the deed spread out before him, as usual. The clause remained present, tangible, and still his. However, now he saw faces connected to the houses. He recognized people, not suits, not developers. Families were attempting to establish themselves on property they were unaware was not available for purchase. He reached for the telephone and contacted Boone. "I need to discuss something with you," Elijah stated. Boone responded, "I'm listening." Elijah continued, "If I delay until all the houses are completed, the price will increase significantly. However, if I intervene now, I might prevent these people from facing a difficult situation. They've just moved in, Boone. I observed a young girl riding a bicycle with training wheels today." A considerable silence followed. Boone's voice softened. "That presents a difficult ethical decision, Elijah. You are requesting something that is not permissible. It's a personal matter. Legally, you are justified, as Otis confirmed. However, what kind of justice do you seek? I am unwilling to cause harm to these individuals," Elijah stated. "Yet, I do want West Haven to be held accountable. They didn't merely trespass. They obliterated my family's history as if it held no significance. Then perhaps the true inquiry is it possible to inflict pain upon them without harming the people who purchased those homes in good faith?" Elijah rubbed his eyes. "Is it possible?" Boone paused once more. "Gaining their commitment requires careful consideration and meticulous attention to detail. Allow them to actively participate in the process, enabling them to take ownership. Ensure your guidance is clear and impactful, so it resonates even before others become involved." Elijah reclined in his chair. The ceiling fan rotated slowly above him. "I observed someone planting a tree today," he remarked quietly. He appeared pleased, as if envisioning this as their permanent residence. "Perhaps it still could be," Boone responded. "The outcome relies on your actions." That night, Elijah experienced little sleep. He revisited the perimeter of the property, holding a flashlight, observing lights shimmering from windows overlooking the southern field. Within those houses, families were establishing themselves, displaying pictures, preparing meals, and putting children to sleep. He couldn't have been responsible for their losses, yet he couldn't overlook the arrogance of West Haven, Jessica Brenner's dismissive gesture, the unanswered calls from their lawyers, and their disregard for generations, as if constructing on unclaimed territory. Elijah remained motionless for an extended period at the tree line. The wind rustled through the tall grass. He recalled Otis, remembering the nights that man had kept watch on the porch, a shotgun resting across his lap, prepared for any trouble. Otis favored immediate action. However, Elijah valued strategy and carefully considered his options. He resolved to wait until the final brick was in place, not to inflict harm upon the families, but to ensure those who had shown disrespect towards his family faced the complete consequence. And then, he would ensure no one ever forgot the name Otis Jackson, but Elijah understood that patience wouldn't simplify the next phase. It would only make it more significant. The notification arrived by mail, enclosed within a polished invitation featuring gold detailing. "You are cordially invited to the grand opening of West Haven Estates, Phase 2 celebration and ribbon-cutting ceremony. Join us for food, live music, and a look at the future of luxury living in Easter Alabama." Elijah examined the card for a minute before setting it on the kitchen counter beside the deed. The event was scheduled for a Saturday morning in April. At that time, 138 homes were completely built. An additional 18 were undergoing final inspections. The community center had recently opened, featuring a pool, tennis courts, and a marble floor lobby resembling a country club. It was being hailed as the crown jewel of the county, and every inch of it was situated on Jackson land. The night before, Elijah carefully ironed his only suit, the one he wore to church, weddings, and funerals, paying special attention to the cuffs, a detail Otis would have emphasized. He packed a leather folder containing the original deed, the notarized clause, the surveyor's report, photo evidence, and legal opinions. He placed it on the passenger seat with the care one would give a newborn child. As he arrived at the newly paved entrance of West Haven Estates, the morning sun broke through. Banners fluttered in the breeze. A white tent stood on the clubhouse lawn where guests enjoyed champagne and sampled small sandwiches off silver trays. He parked near the back of the lot, concealed from view. No one recognized him. Not yet. From the periphery of the gathering, Elijah observed as Jessica Brenner, wearing a vibrant yellow dress and large sunglasses, approached the podium. Microphones were adjusted. Camera flashes went off. "Welcome," she exclaimed. "Today signifies both the completion of our second phase and the beginning of a promising new era for our community." Applause resonated. The mayor stood beside her. Several county officials, whom Elijah had contacted months prior without receiving a response, were also present. Jessica continued, her voice gaining intensity with each phrase. "Thanks to our exceptional team and the backing of our local government, West Haven is now a home to 156 families and expanding." The string quartet played gently in the background. Elijah moved forward deliberately, the sound of his shoes on the gravel noticeable. Jessica looked towards him, but showed no reaction. Not yet. He raised his voice just enough to be heard over the music. "Before you cut that ribbon," he said calmly, and the crowd fell silent, heads turning. Jessica blinked. "Mr. Jackson," she said, her voice strained. "This is a private event." "I understand precisely what this concerns," Elijah stated. "That is why I am present." The mayor appeared doubtful. "Could you please elaborate on the problem?" Elijah raised a leather folder. "I am Elijah Jackson. My family has held title to this land for more than 100 years, and every house, road, tennis court, and mailbox West Haven constructed sits on property that was never legally theirs." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the audience. Jessica moved away from the podium. "We pursued all legal avenues. A zoning error occurred some time back that you failed to fix," Elijah added, opening the file. "And significantly, this deed from 1923 includes a provision drafted by my great-grandfather. It specifies that any building constructed without permission transfers ownership to the deed's owner." He presented the document. A reporter, standing close, moved to photograph the page. Jessica's expression remained unchanged. "You're attempting to deceive us," she whispered. "That clause is invalid after this length of time." Elijah remained unmoved. "I've had this examined by 3 lawyers. They all concurred. It carries legal weight. This land belongs to me, and everything constructed upon it as well." A man in a gray suit spoke quietly to Jessica. She visibly paled. The mayor cleared his throat. "We might need to suspend the ceremony." Jessica faced Elijah again, her voice now firm. "You observed. You monitored our construction, and you remained silent. I informed you on your initial visit that it was my land," he stated calmly. "I saw you smile, and you called security, instructed me to speak with your legal team. So I did." A gasp came from behind you. It could have been a homeowner or someone else. Reporters were now gathering, with flash bulbs popping and pens writing furiously. Jessica appeared as if she'd swallowed glass. "You'll never get away with this," she whispered. "I don't have to get away with anything," Elijah replied. "You passed the folder to me." He closed it carefully and stepped back. The ceremony was halted. No ribbon was cut. Elijah recognized this as merely the initial stage. The significant repercussions hadn't yet materialized. The following morning, Elijah's phone began ringing before sunrise. An unknown number appeared. He allowed it to proceed to voicemail. Subsequently, it rang again and again. By the afternoon, he had accumulated 12 missed calls for voicemails and 2 emails flagged as urgent from West Haven's legal team. By evening, The local news had broadcast a segment entitled "Man Claims Ownership of Entire HOA Community." Is it legal? The anchor appeared bewildered. Elijah was not. He was at his kitchen table with Boone, examining the deed for what seemed like the 100th time. The wording hadn't changed. The ink remained faded but legible. Boone reclined. They are panicking. They constructed a $1 million project on land they didn't own. You possess every advantage. That night, West Haven's president telephoned directly. Elijah didn't recognize the voice. He had never communicated with the man previously, but he detected the strain. "Mr. Jackson, I believe it is time we consider a resolution. We are keen to resolve this matter swiftly and discreetly. The current media coverage is not beneficial to anyone involved. We are ready to provide you with appropriate compensation for the land's assessed value, alongside a goodwill premium." Elijah didn't react with laughter, though it was evident he was restraining himself. "You're suggesting a payment equivalent to the land's previous worth, prior to the construction of the luxury neighborhood? That's a significant offer. It feels like an offensive proposition." Elijah stated, "You didn't simply relocate Earth. You sold property you didn't own. And now you wish to purchase it at a reduced price after you sold it for millions?" Silence followed, and Elijah could hear the breathing on the other end. Controlled. Stiff. "We could challenge this, Mr. Jackson." "You could." Elijah concurred. "But every home you constructed is already sold. Every buyer now has to question who owns their house. You wish to fight? That will be complicated, costly, and public." Another lengthy pause. "We'll be in touch." The line disconnected. 2 days later, the formal offer arrived via courier. The offer included $4.2 million for the land, a non-disclosure agreement, and a confirmation that Elijah would relinquish all claims to the structures built. Boone reacted with disbelief, nearly choking on his coffee. "I've seen offers disguised as bribes before, but this is exceptional," he remarked, pushing the proposal away. Elijah remained silent, his attention fixed on his neighbor's children using a trampoline recently installed where his grandfather used to park his tractor. He was unwilling to have those children displaced. He was unwilling to have those families hurt. However, he also would not allow West Haven to escape with minimal consequences. Therefore, Elijah prepared a response. He refused the offer, requesting the complete assessed value for each sold home and unsold lot, reduced by a 10% discount for a comprehensive settlement. He pledged not to initiate eviction or repossession, but stipulated that West Haven must cover the legal expenses for each homeowner requiring a revised deed. He insisted on ownership of the community center, parks, and all remaining properties, requesting $61 million. There were no restrictions on speaking publicly, and a public apology was required. Jessica did not contact anyone. Her name was absent from any new official communications, though Elijah received reports. She was reportedly on leave. Some believed she had been dismissed, while others said she resigned. Regardless, the dispute had escalated to the boardroom. During the following 4 weeks, legal representatives from both parties met almost daily. Boone and Simone were seated opposite West Haven's corporate counsel, meticulously negotiating while Elijah largely observed the proceedings. They explored various approaches, proposing a reduced sum, hinting at arbitration, and even implying Elijah had knowingly permitted construction to proceed. Elijah remained composed, stating, "You built on my land. I didn't request it. I cautioned you against it. You disregarded me." Ultimately, West Haven conceded. The concluding agreement was finalized 6 weeks after the unsuccessful ribbon cutting. Elijah's total compensation amounted to $54 million, along with ownership of the community clubhouse, the undeveloped lots, and complete legal authority to oversee the correction of homeowner deeds, ensuring no families were displaced. The settlement was formally revealed at a public press conference. Elijah made brief remarks, expressing gratitude to his great-grandfather for his vision and noting that the past occasionally safeguards the future. He departed quietly, avoiding any media attention or interviews. A desire for tranquility remained. However, Elijah wasn't complete. He needed to ensure Otis's legacy represented something greater than retribution. The funds didn't alter Elijah, not in the anticipated manner. He continued to reside in the familiar house, the aged farmhouse where he'd spent his childhood, where his mother's cooking had permeated the walls with the aroma of fried okra, and where Otis's hammer marks were still evident in the doorframe. He didn't purchase a new truck, didn't relocate to a larger city, didn't install fencing around the land. He did, however, create something tangible. Several months following the agreement, Elijah utilized a segment of the funds, approximately $18 million, to purchase an additional 40-acre parcel of land situated 10 miles east outside the town of Tuskegee. This was land that had remained unclaimed for decades. He designated it the Otis Project. Working alongside local contractors, teachers, and community leaders, Elijah initiated the construction of what he envisioned as a unique neighborhood, designed not for financial gain, but for individuals who had previously been excluded from residing in areas like West Haven. The homes were offered at cost, with mortgage support integrated into the program, and applications were evaluated with empathy rather than relying solely on credit scores. Within the first year, 24 homes were finished, and each was occupied by a family. Individuals from all walks of life, teachers, single parents, factory workers, veterans, were welcomed, regardless of their circumstances. One morning, while standing on the first street of the Otis Project, Elijah observed a group of children playing tag on a front lawn. One little boy sparked a memory of his brother Curtis when they were 7 and too stubborn to wear shoes during summer. Boone arrived later that afternoon, holding a clipboard and a wide grin. "You know what they're calling you in town now," he said. Elijah raised an eyebrow. "What?" "The accidental mayor," Boone chuckled. "People say you were given millions, and instead of vanishing, you began constructing front porches." Elijah smiled. Otis didn't nurture hoarders. He cultivated workers. This wasn't merely words. Elijah utilized a portion of the remaining funds to establish a community center in Opelika, offering complimentary tutoring programs, job placement assistance, and a garden where seniors instructed children on cultivating tomatoes that weren't purchased from a grocery store. He also transformed the former West Haven Community Clubhouse, which he now legally owned, into a shared resource center, renaming it Jackson Hall. The tennis courts were made available for complimentary lessons to local young people. The pool offered dedicated swim times for seniors 3 mornings each week. While the Homeowners Association initially disapproved, the homeowners themselves greatly appreciated the changes. Initially, a small number of residents distanced themselves from Elijah, fearing he would seize their homes and viewing him as an adversary. Eventually, they understood that he didn't intend to dismantle what they had established. He simply desired recognition for the work his family had previously undertaken. Now, many approached him directly, seeking information about repairs, suggestions for local services, or guidance on cultivating vegetables in Alabama's challenging red clay. He consistently offered assistance to everyone. "I ain't trying to be a hero," he told a vet, a single mom, and one of the new homeowners. "I simply believe land should never be taken without acknowledging those who labored upon it previously." Yvette nodded. "Well, my son considers you a kind of superhero," Elijah chuckled. "Have you ever seen me attempt to change a flat tire?" He's likely to reconsider quickly. With the commencement of the second year of the Otis Project, Elijah made a final visit to the county archives. This building, where he initially retrieved the original deed, now displayed a framed photograph of Otis Jackson. Below the photo was a plaque that read, "In honor of the man who protected his land so his descendants could protect their community." Elijah stood silently for a moment, then reached into his pocket. He removed a small object wrapped in cloth, Otis's old railroad watch. He carefully set it on the glass counter close to the display. "I always detest being late," Elijah murmured. The sky outside had shifted to that gentle golden hue just prior to sunset, the very shade Otis would often appreciate following a lengthy day in the fields. Elijah smiled, not the smile of a victor, but the smile of one who had fulfilled an obligation. For ultimately, the clause wasn't simply about preventing thieves, it was about ensuring no one overlooked those who preceded them. And now, The land was speaking once more, its voice stronger than the sound of the bulldozers. If this narrative resonated with you, please consider subscribing. More stories such as this, authentic, unfiltered, and grounded in truth, are forthcoming. A 12-year-old boy, Tyrese Porter, entered a bank to deposit his birthday money. What should have been a proud moment became embarrassing until his mother arrived and altered the situation without raising her voice. Tyrese Porter wasn't typically a nervous child. He was quick with a joke, fast on the court, and intelligent enough to keep up with children 2 grades older. This morning, a clammy feeling gripped his hands, and his breath came in short bursts as he gazed up at the large glass doors of Crestmark Bank on Fremont Avenue in Tempe, Arizona. He had just celebrated his 12th birthday, and this marked his first independent deposit. The envelope within his hoodie pocket contained precisely $220. It was birthday money, a mix of 5s, 10s, and a couple of 20s. Nothing extravagant. For him, this was the culmination of months of effort, supported by Aunt Claudine, Uncle Leo, and his older cousin Ronald, who worked evening shifts at the auto shop. His mother, Dr. Alicia Monroe, had brought him to this location but remained in the car, offering him a final piece of encouragement through the open window. "You got this, baby. Walk in there confidently, as if you belong. Because you do." He nodded, attempting to conceal the tremor in his legs. The sun shone brightly from mid-morning. The sneakers, still dusty from a pickup game the previous night, made a slight squeak on the floor as he entered. The bank was peaceful, not deserted, but peaceful in a relaxed Saturday atmosphere. A man wearing a button-down shirt was at the kiosk, looking at his phone. An older couple occupied the waiting chairs, quietly discussing some paperwork. Only one woman was in line at the counter, signing a document, with her toddler chewing on a deposit slip nearby. Tyrese positioned himself behind her and attempted to regulate his breathing. He glanced down at the envelope, verifying his handwriting on the exterior. "The Porter Savings." He had rehearsed his signature 3 times the previous night, not because he was required to, but because it seemed like the appropriate action. He observed the digital cue board advance to the subsequent number. The woman and her toddler departed. The bank teller did not even lift her head as she announced, "Next." Tyrese moved forward. "Hello," he said, polite and firm, just as his mother had instructed. "I'm here to deposit into my savings." The teller's eyes lifted slowly. Her name tag indicated she was Margaret Delaney. She appeared to be in her late 50s, with silver-streaked brown hair and a largely unchanging, tight-lipped expression. She offered no smile, no greeting in return. Instead, her gaze immediately fell upon the envelope he held. "And where did you obtain that sum of money?" Tyrese blinked, uncertain if he had understood her question correctly. "It's my birthday money," he stated, raising the envelope slightly. "My aunt and my cousin had given it to me. I simply wanted to deposit it." "Uh-huh," she responded, interrupting him. She bent forward across the counter, examining the bills as if they were questionable. "Do you possess a state-issued ID?" Tyrese paused. "No, Mom, just my school ID and my account number. My mom opened it with me last summer." Margaret released a slow breath through her nose. With the tone adults use when they've had enough of dealing with someone, she shifted her gaze toward a nearby colleague, then returned her attention to Tyrese. "I'm going to need to verify all of this," she stated. "You could be anyone, and this could be anything." Tyrese's chest tightened. He looked down at the envelope again, as if it might have somehow changed since he walked in. But it was still just an envelope, still his name, still the money he'd been given, fair and square. "I can give you the account number," he said. His voice remained calm, but it softened. Margaret did not respond. Instead, she turned to pick up the phone near her station. "I'm calling the manager to assist. Please wait." The man at the kiosk had now turned to observe. The older couple whispered something, their eyes moving toward the boy at the counter. Tyrese felt his face flush, and he tried to avoid looking up. He reached into his backpack for the small blue bank booklet his mom had given him. It didn't seem promising, but Margaret no longer focused on him. She was engaged in a phone conversation, occasionally looking his way with a tense expression. Tyrese felt a knot in his throat. This wasn't the plan. However, The moment she ended the call, things began to deteriorate quicker than he could manage. Margaret placed the phone down with a gentle click and directed a sharp look at Tyrese, as if assessing him for a situation he hadn't agreed to. "Someone will be with you in a minute," she stated briefly. She then focused on her computer screen, her fingers tapping as if he'd disappeared from her view entirely. Tyrese stood there, uncertain whether to speak or simply wait. He looked down at the envelope again. It wasn't trembling, but his hands felt rigid now, as if they didn't quite belong to him. The lobby felt colder, not in temperature, but in feeling. It was as if the atmosphere changed when she asked that first question. The man from the kiosk was still observing. One of the tellers was situated a few windows down. There was no verbal communication, but their eyes consistently averted, quickly glancing away each time Tyrese made eye contact. A tall man wearing a dark gray tie emerged from a hallway located behind the counter. His name tag identified him as Kenneth Flores, branch manager. He moved towards Tyrese deliberately, maintaining a polite demeanor but with a reserved customer service expression that concealed his thoughts. "Hi there," Kenneth stated. "Are you attempting to make a deposit?" Tyrese affirmed with a nod. "Yes, sir, into my savings account." He says it's birthday money. Margaret spoke from her desk without looking up. Kenneth briefly glanced at her, then returned his attention to Tyrese. "Do you have an account number on you?" Tyrese provided the small blue booklet and the slip with his account info. Kenneth took them and began typing into a tablet. "I don't have a state ID," Tyrese added, his voice quieter now. "Just school, I'm 12. Kenneth paused for half a second. 12? And you came in by yourself?" Kenneth nodded once. "Yes, sir," his mom said. "Okay, can I take a look at the money?" Tyrese offered the envelope. Kenneth opened it with care, as if handling explosives, and began counting the bills directly at the counter. Meanwhile, Margaret commented, "I just thought we should be cautious. You never know these days." Her words felt like a sharp rebuke. Tyrese stopped moving. He wasn't sure if a response was expected. He felt uneasy, but remained still. The issue wasn't precisely her words, but the manner in which she delivered them. It felt as though he was being assessed as a risk, a potential danger, an issue requiring control. Kenneth remained silent, completing his count before turning to Tyrese. 220, correct?" Tyrese confirmed with a nod. "Okay, I need a moment. I'll verify the account." As Kenneth moved away, Tyrese stood still, the envelope no longer in his grasp. A constriction formed at his throat. He resisted the urge to cry, unwilling to do so in the presence of unfamiliar people. He attempted to recall what his mom always said: "You're not the problem, baby. You're the reason someone else gets to grow today." However, at that moment, it didn't feel like anyone was learning anything. A woman a few spots behind in line appeared as though she might speak. She opened her mouth, then simply looked at her phone instead. When Kenneth returned, he handed Tyrese the slip confirming the account and deposit total. "You're all set," he said. "It's gone through," Tyrese whispered, thanking him. As he turned to leave, Margaret quietly added, "Better safe than sorry." The comment wasn't loud, but it was audible. Tyrese halted his departure. His ears burned once more. He desired to leave, yet also felt compelled to say something, anything at all. Instead, he simply reversed direction toward the exit, suppressing the words he couldn't voice. However, beyond those doors, a pair of eyes had been observing, and they weren't about to remain silent any longer. The glass door opened slowly, and a woman entered, her presence immediately altering the atmosphere. Dr. Alicia Monroe commanded attention without speaking. Her blazer was a crisp slate blue with subtle pinstripes, and her heels clicked across the polished floor with purpose. Alicia carried herself with an air of assuredness. Heads turned, some driven by curiosity, others by a natural response. She wasn't seeking attention. However, she was here for her son. The moment she entered, Tyrese noticed her. His shoulders tightened, not with fear, but with something akin to relief. It was like finding the handle on a locked door. Margaret looked up. Her expression tightened briefly, as if anticipating this moment. Alicia didn't immediately go to the counter. Instead, she walked directly to her son, placed a gentle hand on his back and spoke to him, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "You okay?" Tyrese nodded, though not convincingly. She refrained from pushing the matter. Instead, she shifted her attention to the counter, making eye contact with Margaret, then Kenneth, who had returned, perceiving a change in the atmosphere. "Good morning," Alicia stated, her voice steady and composed. "I'm Dr. Alicia Monroe. Tyrese is my son." Kenneth adjusted his throat and offered a brief, polite smile. "Yes, ma'am, everything is handled. His deposit has been processed." "That isn't what I'm here to discuss," she responded. Her voice remained level. There was no need to raise it. Each word broke the silence. "I observed my son enter here independently today, displaying pride and readiness to accomplish something adults frequently advise children to do, to be responsible. Rather than receiving guidance, he experienced questioning, doubt, and humiliation." Margaret's face reddened. "Ma'am, I was simply adhering to protocol. Your protocol does not involve accusing a child of suspicious conduct because he arrived with cash on his birthday." Kenneth intervened promptly. "Dr. Monroe, I want to assure you that was not our goal." Alicia turned slightly, her hands remaining still at her sides. "Are you aware of how many accounts my company maintains with this bank, Mr. Flores?" Kenneth moved slightly. "I understand there are 3. Langford Innovations, your personal account, and Monroe Education Group." "That is correct," she confirmed. "I have directly instructed more than 300 young students in this city regarding financial literacy, predominantly black and brown, many of whom are entering environments where they face immediate judgment. Therefore, I am not unfamiliar with this discussion." A silence descended upon the lobby. Even the toddler from earlier had become quiet. Margaret began to speak, but Alicia raised her hand, not to cut her off, but to momentarily suspend the discussion. "This extends beyond just Tyrese. This concerns every child who enters a place like this and is told, whether subtly or overtly, that they don't belong, that they must demonstrate something that no one else is required to demonstrate. Do you request state identification from every child, or just mine?" Margaret's voice lowered. "That isn't equitable. It's unjust to impose that burden on a 12-year-old simply because you presume something about him before he even greets you." Alicia retreated slightly and indicated her son. He entered the space, behaving as we instruct parents to guide their children. Rather than receiving recognition for his efforts, he was perceived as a potential problem. The elderly couple in the waiting area briefly looked at each other. One of them offered a deliberate nod. While not everyone appeared at ease, they seemed alert. Tyrese observed his mom with wide eyes. It wasn't simply the content of her words that surprised him, but also her delivery. Calm, deliberate. She didn't raise her voice, nor did she seek sympathy. She spoke truthfully before those who were present. "I'm not requesting an apology," Alicia stated finally. "I am requesting awareness." Yet, as the impact of her words became apparent, Tyrese remained silent, as something within him still felt the need to complete what he began. A brief stillness fell over the room. Kenneth stood rigidly behind the counter, his hands clasped together, reminiscent of a school principal delivering a lecture. Margaret's gaze had dropped, focused on the laminated calendar close to her keyboard. The branch was silent, unusually so. However, Tyrese wasn't noticing any of that. He remained looking at his mom. She hadn't spoken loudly. She didn't need to. The way she held herself was striking, as if each word she selected was a brick intentionally set. He understood she was upset. He sensed it in the tightness of her shoulders. Beyond that, she possessed a protective, steady, and unwavering nature. He aspired to emulate those qualities. "Tyrese," she stated, turning slightly. He paused, surprised by her question. He had assumed she would manage the situation as she typically did, sheltering him and resolving issues to spare him involvement. However, she was now presenting him with an option. He glanced at the adults behind the counter. He observed the woman who had made him feel like an outsider. He glanced back at his mom, who stood there as a barrier between him and a world that hadn't yet learned how to properly interact with him. He inhaled deeply. "I came in here to complete the tasks adults had instructed me to do," he stated. His voice faltered slightly, but he persevered. Preserve my money, manage it independently, demonstrate responsibility. His hand clenched around the unused envelope still folded in his pocket. I wasn't anticipating any festivities or the like, he added. Margaret looked up at him now. Her expression had softened. I had everything needed, my belongings, my account information, and my school ID. I remained composed throughout, even when I couldn't grasp the reason for the different treatment. He didn't explicitly state it was due to my race, wasn't necessary. The atmosphere made the assumption clear. I simply wanted to deposit my money in the bank, Tyrese concluded. That was my only wish. He turned to Kenneth. My hope is that no one else experiences something similar. Kenneth nodded slowly. You're right, and I'm sorry you were made to feel that way. Alicia listened, raising her chin slightly. We should have done better, he added. Margaret, who had been quiet, finally spoke. I misread the situation. I did, and I'm sorry, Tyrese. Her tone softened now, not entirely without defensiveness, but closer to sincerity. The reason for her words, guilt or understanding, remained unclear, but at least she acknowledged it. Alicia didn't respond immediately. She turned to Tyrese once more. Ready? She inquired. He offered a small nod. Not yet. Kenneth appeared puzzled. Is there anything else we can do? Tyrese turned back towards the counter. Can I make the deposit again? A moment of quiet followed. Alicia smiled faintly. Kenneth quietly chuckled. It's already been processed, but we can review it again. Symbolically, Tyrese moved forward and retrieved the blue bank booklet. Kenneth accepted the booklet and retrieved a new deposit slip. Please complete this one, he said. Tyrese took the pen and wrote deliberately, ensuring a steady hand. He presented the slip, and Kenneth stamped it, acknowledging the action even though it held no practical effect. The focus transcended the numerical entries within the system. It represented a symbolic act of recovering what had been unjustly lost. Margaret observed quietly as Tyrese retrieved the slip, folded it into his booklet, and faced his mom again. All done, he announced. Let's go, Alicia responded. Yet, her gaze paused briefly. On Margaret, then Kenneth, then the young man her son was rapidly developing. But outside, as they entered the bright Arizona sunlight, an unspoken tension remained between them, something that required discussion before they departed. The parking lot was half full, a typical midday pause where heat waves rose from windshields and voices floated from open car windows. Inside the Monroe sedan, everything was still. Alicia closed the driver's side door carefully. Tyrese fastened his seatbelt, then looked out the window for a few silent moments. The building appeared different now, smaller, less imposing. But the feeling of tension in his chest hadn't completely disappeared. Want to talk about it? She asked gently. He didn't respond immediately. Why did she look at me that way? Alicia didn't hurry with her response. She reclined in her seat and inhaled, as if she's answered this question previously, but not in this manner. Because she formed an opinion about who you are before you spoke. That's unfair. No, she stated. It isn't. Tyrese glanced at the envelope once more. Still empty. Still neatly folded. I haven't done anything wrong. You haven't? She inquired. Sometimes the world reacts to perceptions rather than reality. Tyrese remained silent. Then, a question arose. Would she have requested all of that if I were a white kid? Alicia's jaw tightened subtly. It wasn't anger, but more like a pain she'd learned to carry so well that it didn't always surface. She responded no. Probably not. They contemplated that reality for a time. It was an uncomfortable feeling. It wasn't meant to be pleasant, but it was truthful. I felt lost for words at that moment. Tyrese spoke softly. I believe that expressing frustration would only exacerbate the situation. Alicia turned to him. You performed precisely as expected. You remained composed. You voiced your thoughts when prepared, and you presented the truth. Tyrese made eye contact with her. You did not appear displeased that I initially remained silent. She shook her head. No, I felt admiration for you. I still feel admiration for you. He nodded slowly. The tightness in his shoulders began to lessen slightly. Alicia adjusted her seatbelt and focused on the road ahead. This is the reason I encourage you. Why do I expect so much? Not because perfection is required, but because sometimes that's what people expect just for you to be equal. I hate that. I know, she responded. Me too. A beat passed. I wanted her to feel embarrassed, Tyrese said. I wanted her to feel small. I get that, she said. But the goal isn't to shrink people down. It's to open their eyes. Let them carry what they've done, so they can choose to do better next time. But what if they don't? Then that's on them, not on you. Tyrese rested his head against the seat. She didn't offer an apology until you arrived. Alicia observed her son, speaking softly. Occasionally, individuals only behave properly when they understand that the person they are disregarding possesses influence. It isn't correct. However, it occurs. She ought to have treated me with respect from the beginning. Agreed. They remained silent for a brief period. A vehicle parked 2 spaces down, and a woman emerged with a boy, approximately 5 or 6 years old, clutching a plastic coin bank. Alicia offered a small smile. Notice that? Another parent guiding their child in learning about money. Tyrese gazed out the window. I hope he isn't subjected to the experiences I faced. I hope someone like you is present when he arrives. That comment brought a smile to Tyrese's face for the first time that day. He looked at his mom. Do you believe I made a positive impact today? Alicia hesitated. I believe you accomplished something few people would do. You entered there with pride. You exited with your dignity. And along the way, you compelled people to confront their own reflections. He gazed back at the building. Next time I visit, I desire to go alone again. Alicia smiled. That's wise. As she inserted the key into the ignition, there remained one more lesson Tyrese needed to grasp. Something she'd withheld since the moment he entered that bank. The car emitted a quiet hum as Alicia turned the key, but she paused before driving away. Her hand rested on the gear shift, her fingers still for a moment. There's something I didn't tell you, she said, her eyes fixed forward. Tyrese looked over. About what? About that bank? About Margaret. He waited. I've been there before, she said, a few months ago. I was opening a secondary business account, and she was the one who helped me. Tyrese blinked. Seriously? She wasn't rude, but she wasn't warm either. She recalled thinking she was distant, like she had somewhere more important to be. I dismissed it as a difficult day. He frowned. So, were you already aware of her behavior? Alicia nodded. I suspected something, but I didn't anticipate you experiencing the most significant impact. Tyrese glanced out the window again, his jaw clenched. Do you believe she acts this way toward other children? I'm unsure, Alicia responded. However, I recognize what prejudice appears as, masked by a smile or its absence. Tyrese settled back in his seat. He felt frustration, not anger, towards his mom, but rather a burden from the complexity that had enveloped something seemingly straightforward. I don't understand, he murmured. People frequently advise doing the right thing, saving money, being polite, and arriving punctually. Then this occurred. Alicia glanced at him. That's because doing the right thing doesn't always guarantee reciprocal treatment. However, it does mean you're developing something irreplaceable. What's that? Character and memory. The kind that remains with you, so when another child experiences it, you'll know precisely how to react. He paused briefly. Then, will this not be the last instance of this kind of event? Alicia slowly shook her head. Likely not. Tyrese breathed deeply through his nose. That's good, she smiled gently. But next time, the impact won't be the same. You will be prepared, and perhaps the people around you will be more capable too, because you compelled them to confront something they wish to avoid. He examined the envelope, repeatedly opening and closing it as if it were origami. Then he stated, I still want to do it properly. The deposit? You already completed it, she responded, looking at the booklet in his lap. No, I mean return another day, enter, complete the form, hand it to someone who shows me respect. Alicia's smile widened. You want to repeat the process. I want to conclude things correctly. He said it without pause. Alicia nodded slowly. We will do that when it's convenient for you. Tyrese straightened up. When I do, I won't question my decisions. I'll walk in as if I'm meant to be there, because you're meant to be, she said. You always have been. Don't allow a single moment to diminish you. He considered those words briefly. Afterward, he opened the glove box, placed the envelope inside, and secured it definitively. There's no reason to keep something that's meaningless. She lifted an eyebrow. Are you certain? Yes, I believe I've just made the most significant contribution already, she chuckled, a quiet feeling originating deep within his chest. You truly are your father's son, she remarked. Tyrese smiled. I say that when I'm being clever. You say it when I'm being wise. They departed the parking lot gradually, the bank receding behind them. As the car joined the main road, Tyrese looked down at the deposit booklet one last time before placing it into his backpack. The numbers were visible. However, the most significant aspect wasn't documented. He had acquired it without spending any money. However, before the day concluded, Tyrese had one final statement. It was a truth not found in formal education. They were midway back when Tyrese spoke again. His tone was even, yet his delivery prompted Alicia to look at him. You ever feel tired of having to prove something every time you walk in a room? She didn't respond immediately. The road stretched ahead, flat and unobstructed, the Arizona sun drawing distinct shadows across the dashboard. She understood the importance of thoughtful replies to questions like that. Constantly, she observed Tyrese focused on his hands. I didn't even do anything wrong, he stated. Yet it felt necessary to justify herself, even for a simple deposit. You did, she confirmed. And that's what makes you remarkable in a positive sense. You entered with honesty and departed with your dignity. You refused to allow them to diminish it. He remained silent for a period. Then, he expressed a desire to not feel anger constantly. You don't need to, she responded. Anger isn't the objective, it's a signal. What follows is what holds significance. Tyrese inclined his head, seemingly contemplating her words. So, how should I handle it? She asked. You must bear it constructively. Allow it to refine you, not to make you unyielding. He nodded, as if processing her advice. Alicia stopped at a gas station, needing to purchase a bottle of water before completing the drive. Stepping from the car, she lightly tossed her keys into Tyrese's lap. Lock the doors if you need to. I won't be long. She then entered the store. For the first time that day, Tyrese found himself alone. This time, he had only his thoughts. He glanced down at the keys, then looked back at the parking lot. It wasn't about the bank anymore. It was about the way people viewed him before he even had a chance to speak. About how his mom had faced challenges he hadn't known existed until today. He felt a sense of needing to stand with more confidence, to shoulder a greater burden, despite the unfairness of it. The car door made a sound as Alicia came back with a chilled bottle of water. She gave it to him silently, returned to the driver's seat, and fastened her seatbelt. Tyrese unscrewed the lid and drank. You know, he said, placing the bottle down, I believe the most difficult aspect wasn't her asking all those questions. It was the expression on her face, as if I wasn't worthy of being present. Alicia nodded thoughtfully. That's the method they employ to make you vanish, she said. Not through words, but through uncertainty, through silence. With that expression, he continued, his voice gaining strength, but I didn't vanish. No, you didn't. She reached out and briefly squeezed his hand, adding, and you won't. Not now, not ever. The remainder of the drive was completed in near silence, but it was a silence that felt substantial, not devoid of meaning. As they arrived at the driveway, Tyrese moved forward and gazed at her. Alicia smiled, as she always did. I'm not just going to remember how they treated me, he stated. I'm going to remember how I responded. That's the lesson, she confirmed. That's what makes you unstoppable. Tyrese opened the door, took his backpack, and hesitated. I think next time, he said, I'll bring someone else with me, such as Jordan or Micah, and teach them how to manage it as well. Alicia's face brightened. That's what leaders do, she said. Tyrese offered a small, assured nod. So, I suppose I'm a leader now. He stepped out into the sun, and this time his footsteps didn't sound nervous or unsure. They sounded like someone who knew exactly where he was going. If this story resonated with you, even in a small way, please don't just scroll past. Share it, discuss it, because every child like Tyrese deserves to enter the world with confidence. And if you're still reading, please subscribe. There's more to come.